Hey pilots, Drain Man here, and today I got a very special video. Today we are diving into Betaflight. Yes, we are building a monster drone, and if you have not seen all of the videos that led up to this video, which means you didn't see us actually build the drone and solder it and wire it and get it all ready, then you need to go back and you need to watch those videos. They are fire! For the actual quadcopter, the monster drone, we are calling it the monster because it's a freaking monster. That drone is built and ready to go. The crossfire is bound and the TBS Unify is set. For the guys who have been following along, who are sitting on the edge of their seats and can't wait to see this thing fly, like this guy, you are in for a treat because that is what we are getting into. Alright, here we go. So I've got Betaflight pulled up, but before we do anything with Betaflight, I'm going to go ahead and open up the brainfpv.com logo customizer. I am not going to take the time to build my own logo. I might sometime in the future if you guys want to know how to do that. I am a sponsored pilot and I am sponsored by a store, an FPV store, and it's called myfpvstore.com, and they're super awesome, and I don't say that just because I'm sponsored by them. I found a logo for them. And hey, I'm sponsored by them, so I'm going to go ahead and use their startup logo right here. You guys, there are hundreds, I feel like. There's probably not hundreds, but there's a lot of freaking logos on here, so feel free to use any one you want. So what I did is I clicked on that logo, and then I downloaded the newest firmware for my flight controller, which is the Radix. That's the only thing that I have done without you. So now that I have that downloaded, I am here for Betaflight, and the very first thing I'm going to do before I touch anything is I'm going to update my firmware. So I'm going to click on Update Firmware, and then I need to go ahead and plug the monster in. Now, before I plug it in, I want you to know nearby I have my radio, I have my goggles, I have 2 batteries, and I have the quadcopter sitting right here. It doesn't fit on the table like my 5-inchers do, so I've got that thing on the floor, and I'm going to go ahead and plug it in now. No! Woo! Okay. That thing is monster-enormous. I am not going to mess with anything inside of here right now because any changes we make are just going to be erased when we flash our firmware. So I'm going to click on the CLI, and I'm going to type boot loader, enter, and we are now in DFU mode. If you'll see right here in the top right, that's a nifty little trick if you didn't know how, or you didn't like, some guys don't like pressing the little boot button and trying to hold it and fiddle with it. You don't have to do that. Just type BL in the CLI and then go to update firmware. Alright, so we do want a full chip erase. I'm not going to touch the baud rate or anything like that. Up here where you normally select your firmware, that doesn't matter right now because we're not selecting an online firmware. We're going to flash a local firmware, which is a firmware that we just downloaded from the Brain FPV website. So I'm going to hit load firmware local. I'm going to select my Betaflight 4.1.4, and you'll see where it says My FPV Store, and I'm going to hit open. And once I have it open, I will hit flash firmware, and it's going to erase the microcontroller and then flash it with the new firmware. Alright, so as you'll see here, it says programming has been successful. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and just hit a regular connect. Alright, so the first thing you might notice is our flight controller is actually upside down. Our little model right here on Betaflight is literally upside down. If I tilt the quadcopter, you'll see that it's upside down. And the reason why is because we actually installed the flight controller upside down. There was a pop open canopy. We went ahead and installed it on the top side of that, and we did that for a reason, and that's how we wanted it, and that's okay because we can change that here in Betaflight. So that's the very first thing I want to change. I do want to go in order moving through our tabs, but I do want to change that first. Now, on the left, you'll see all these tabs I have here. If you're not seeing the same tabs as me, you'll see a little spot right here that says Enable Expert Mode. I want you to go ahead and click that, and that'll pop up all of these tabs. If you're trying to learn more about Betaflight and you're watching this to learn about Betaflight, This is not going to be the video for that. You will learn a lot, but this is not for that. All right, so let's head over to the configuration tab, and the first thing I want to do is I want to come here to the board and sensor alignment, and I want to get my board fixed. So I'm going to go to pitch degrees, and I'm going to hit 180, and then I'm going to try save and reboot. And now you'll see that our model is the correct side up. So then what I want you guys to do is take your quadcopter and make sure it's laying flat on the floor, flat on the table, and hit calibrate accelerometer. All right, after that's done, we can continue on. So the first thing we're going to get into is we're going to get into our ports tab. And in here, we need to set up a few things. The first thing we need to set up is our receiver. And our receiver is on UART 3. You might remember when we wired it. The next thing is that our ESCs, these ESCs are very important because this is not a normal setup where we're getting telemetry through a normal path. We're actually getting it from the ESCs. So we need to go to UART 4 and we need to go under sensor input and we need to change disabled to ESC. If you were watching along with me and you watched me solder up this board and you were paying attention when I was wiring everything up, then you know that I wired our smart audio wire to UART 1. So I'm going to go under UART 1 peripherals and I'm going to set this up for TBS Smart Audio. You'll notice that we got a little warning that the VTX table has not been set up correctly, and without it, VTX control will not be possible. So we will have to go set that up, and that's okay. We will do that. All right, so we're going to hit save and reboot. And after we've done that, we're back in now. Our actual radio should be responding to stick movements from our receiver now that everything is connected and set up properly. There is one more step, and that is that we need to tell the flight controller that we are using a serial-based receiver, and we're going to get there one thing at a time. So back to the ports tab. Let's just confirm that everything's stuck. And the reason why I do that is because if you do something that the flight controller doesn't like or Betaflight doesn't like, it will kick it out and wipe it away. So if you come back and look and you see that whatever you just set is gone, you know that something's not right. All right, now we're going to head down to the configuration tab. There's a lot of stuff that's going to happen here. All right, so the very first thing is we are rocking a Quad X. And I do want to run reverse motor direction. I run reverse motors on all of my builds. I don't care if it's this big or this big. I run it on all of them. The next thing is over here in the ESC motor features. Now, these ESCs, they are the APD 120 F3 ESCs. They are very powerful and they do not run BL Heli. Normally, when I'm running BL Heli, I can check and find out, is it BL Heli 32, is it BL Heli S, what is it, and then I can figure out what protocol it will accept. You know, am I going to be able to run D-Shot or whatnot, you know, like that. Well, with these ESCs, we can run D-Shot and we can run Pro Shot. Now, normally I default to D-Shot 1200 and then sometimes I'll have issues, so then I'll drop it down to D-Shot 600. 1200 is extremely faster and it's definitely more accurate, but you do bring on a lot of bugs. Things are just going so fast. These ESCs here can handle Pro Shot 1000 and you do get all of the same features you would get from D-Shot. For example, you can use turtle mode, you can still get your beepers going from your motors. So I want to try out Pro Shot 1000. It's not every day you get to use that, so I personally want to use it and I want to see how it flies. The next thing you see here is motor stop. Motor stop is something that we are not going to use. That is something that you would use on like a little whoop drone. That way when it lands and you drop the throttle down, the motors will actually stop. If you were to do something like that on a drone of this magnitude, it could potentially be dangerous because you would not know that it's armed, and then you get near it or somebody else is near it because they don't know that it's armed, and when you apply the throttle, it cuts their freaking head off. So we are going to make sure that we don't check that. All right, so the next thing here of importance would be the bidirectional D-Shot. I just want to bring that up because that is your RPM filters, and that is something that would be cool to set up on a drone like this. That is something that we will do in later videos. I am not going to get into that right now. The next thing is our motor idle throttle value. You want to get up to at least 9. So I am at 9% on that. And these things you can find on the Catalyst website. These are not a secret. It's not some mythical creature that you can't find out about. If you're building one of these and you want to know what they recommend, you can go onto their website and you can find out. So now for my system configuration, it's recommending a 4K. I'm not going to touch that. That's what Brain FPV set out for me. I'm going to leave it there. I don't need my barometer because right now I'm not running GPS. Our board alignment and sensor, we did already set that up, but what I want to do is I want to stop real quick. I'm going to hit save and reboot. And then I'm going to shoot back to my model, and I want to confirm that back is back and left and right is right and left and all that is all correct. So I'm going to take the drone, I'm looking at the front, and I'm going to pick the front up to see the drone tilt back. Okay, and I'm going to pick the back up, and as you can see, the drone is currently, it is 100% off. So I need to go back and I need to rotate that. So that is why I did that. So right here, we need to yaw the drone 180 degrees, and I'm going to hit save and reboot. Now I'm going to try again. I'm going to pick the front up, and that is the front. I'm going to tilt it to the left. That is correct. And I'm going to tilt it to the right. So that is correct. So now our quadcopter knows which direction it is in. It's not confused anymore. We don't need an accelerometer trim because we're not going to be doing anything with angle mode or anything like that. Now for the arming, normally you would change the arming to 180. That will allow the quadcopter to arm all the way at 180 degrees. So I am still going to do that. Nah, I don't know. That's dangerous with something like this. Maybe we will allow 90 degrees, okay? I'm gonna allow the drone at a 90 degree to be able to arm. We are not gonna do 180. Now with Brain FPV, you actually get a graphical OSD, and what that means is you can actually have a picture here rather than a craft name. I'm still gonna write my craft name because I didn't upload a picture or a logo or anything like that yet. The camera angle we're not going to touch. Our receiver, for some reason, it already knows what we're using. I'm not going to argue with that. For our RSSI, you need to make sure that this is checked off because otherwise you won't be able to get your LQ or your RSSI from your actual Crossfire receiver. The next thing over here is other features. I'm not going to enable 3D because I'm not using it, or GPS because I'm also not using it yet. Telemetry, I am going to check telemetry because that's very important. Air mode, I definitely want air mode. I want OSD, I want that, I want that, I want that. I'm not going to touch the beacon tote. I'm not going to touch anything else there. So all of this looks good to me. I'm going to go ahead and hit save and reboot. All right, the next thing we're diving into is our power and battery. Now in here, you will see an onboard ADC, and this is a analog to digital converter. It's just something that's built into your flight controller that will actually read your voltage for you. It's like a little sensor or meter or whatever you want to call it. We need to change that because we don't have one and we can't use it. Well, actually we do have one, but its limit is 35 volts. And if we were to run our voltage, the voltage from the monster through that, we would blow it up. So we got to change that. We are going to be using the ESCs, so we are going to change that to ESC sensor. Okay, our minimum cell voltage does have to go up one because if our quad won't know which battery it actually has. So I'm going to hit save. Okay, so over in the failsafe tab, under stage 2 settings, I want to go ahead and change from 4 to 5, and I want to make sure that stage 2, the procedure is actually to drop. I do not want the quad to try to land itself, especially because I don't even have GPS in here. And this is a really big drone. I don't think it's a good idea to try to set up self-flying features on this thing. Especially, now you could set up GPS rescue if you had a GPS. That is super cool, but that is a video for another day. All right, we're gonna hit save and reboot. All right, we are now on to the PID tuning tab. And inside of the PID tuning tab, I am not going to touch my PIDs at all. And they are probably going to be majorly off because this drone is so freaking big and Betaflight defaults are really not designed for a drone of this magnitude. Now, can you tune this thing and get it flying nice? Yes, yes you can. So I'm gonna leave this alone. We'll see how it does. Maybe, just maybe we'll get lucky and it'll fly amazing. But what we do wanna set up is we wanna go into our rate profile settings, and inside of here I wanna put my rates on here. All right, so we're gonna hit save and we're gonna head over to the receivers tab. And in here, all we want to do is make sure our channel mapping is correct. And what that means is that roll is where roll is supposed to be, throttle is where throttle is supposed to be, so on and so forth. So I'm going to power up my radio.
Welcome to OpenTX. Switch warning.
It is a jumper. I have my radio on. Like I told you earlier, I've already bound my receiver and I have already set up a couple switches. And I also just went through and set up a couple things and made sure that they were all where they needed to be. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in the quadcopter. I'm going to move fast because I don't want to overheat my VTX. If I was smart, I would have done this before I put everything back together. That way I can just unplug my VTX. This is also a good time to check our power and battery tab and see what we got in there. So let's do that.
Telemetry recovered.
So we've got about 24.6 volts. That's because I have one 6-cell battery plugged in and it's not completely charged. Okay, the next thing we need to do is jump into the receivers tab. Let's power up the radio.
Welcome to OpenTX. Switch warning.
And instantly our stats change. This lets us know that they're connected. Let's check yaw, throttle, roll, and pitch. Okay, with center sticks, it looks like, all right, looks like roll is a little low, pitch is a little high, and yaw is bouncing a little bit, but that's all right. So I am going to center these sticks. If you guys don't know how to do this, I've actually, believe it or not, I've got a full video on how to do that. So now all of our sticks are centered. You saw how quick, you saw how easy that was. If you don't know how to do that, but you do want to know how to do that, I will go ahead and link that video down in the video description. So it looks like our channel mapping is good, our receiver is good. The only thing left to do on this page is to change our RSSI to aux3. And that's because I put it on channel 7. So your first 4 channels are throttle, roll, pitch, and yaw. So then you start counting from there. aux1, aux2, aux3. So really aux1 is 5 and aux2 is 6. So I went ahead and set my LQ on channel 7. And that's why you'll see right here on auxiliary 3, it is skyrocketed at 2,000. And that is because I have some flawless connection right now. Thank you, Crossfire, and I'm gonna hit save. The next thing to do is to get into our modes tab. And all we need to do is we need to set up a couple switches. So I'm gonna set up my arm switch, I arm in the downward position. I'll move that over. The only other thing that I'm looking for is turtle mode. And I do not plan to use it at all, but I am going to set it up in case I crash somewhere where I'm completely screwed and cannot get out of that jam. Another thing to consider would be to set up your pre-arm. That way you've got to pre-arm, then flick your switch before you can actually take off. That's actually a really good idea. I think that it'll keep things safe. So I'm gonna set up a pre-arm actually on this thing. So we're gonna hit add range. I'm going to set my pre-arm all the way down. So I've got to flip my aux4 all the way down and then I'll be able to pre-arm. I think that's a good idea. Keep it a little bit safe, and then I'm going to hit save.
Telemetry recovered.
All right, so I've powered up my quad, and I'm going to go to motor 1, and we're going to spin it up. And motor 1 is reading where motor 3 should be. 2 is actually, believe it or not, in the correct place. Motor 3 is where 1 should be, and motor 4 is in the correct place. So I need to switch 1 with 3. So we need to just switch motors 1 and motor 3. If you've never done this before, this is how you remap something. You might have heard that before and you might not know what it is, or you're a pro and you've done it a million times. But what you got to do is you got to head into the CLI, and you got to go to your command line, and you're going to go ahead and type resource. And once it comes up, for example, we are looking for motor 1 and motor 3. So as you'll see, motor 1 is A02 and motor 3 is A10. I really recommend to write this down or save this, copy and paste this somewhere. Don't do it recklessly how I am, because if you screw something up, you're going to be in big trouble. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type resource motor 1 none, resource motor 3 none. So I have now freed both of those motors up so they are no longer locked to the pads that they were on. And then I'm going to resource motor 1 to A10, which is where 3 was. And I'm going to resource motor 3 where 1 was, which is A02. And after I do that, I'm going to hit save. Okay? It is that simple, it is that fast, it is that easy. Alright, back to the motors tab, and we are going to check mark that we understand. I'm going to plug in and we are going to power up, make sure all 4 motors are in the right spot, and I'm going to check their direction. So it is in the correct spot, and it is actually spinning in the wrong direction. Motor 2 is in the top right, and it's spinning in the wrong direction. Motor 3 is in the correct spot, but is spinning in the wrong direction. And motor 4 is in the right spot, but also spinning in the wrong direction. You know what would make my life really easy right now would be to just not run reverse props, because all my motors are already spinning in a certain direction, and that direction is not in reverse. But there's an issue. I want to run reverse props, so I'm going to change it anyways. Now, what would I do? I would pull up BL Heli, and I would go ahead and go in there and turn those around. Well, guess what? There is no BL Heli firmware with these ESCs. They run APD firmware. 2 little pads right on the ESC, and it says reverse. And if you bridge those pads together, your motor direction will actually reverse. So I'm going to go ahead and solder all 4 of those pads and get my motor direction going in the right direction. Alright, so the next thing is going to be our OSD. Diving down to the OSD, there's really not much to this, guys. All I'm going to do is check mark the boxes and put the stuff where I want the stuff to be. If you're not familiar on how to do that, all you do is right here on the left. For example, if you wanted the black log status, you would check that box, and then you would put that where you want to put it. So for example, I want to put it right here. That's it. It's that simple. And if you don't want it anymore, uncheck it. It's literally that simple. Alright, pilots, so the last thing we need to work on, I'm going to go ahead and hit save real quick. The last thing that we need to work on in here is our video transmitter tab. Alright, so what we need to do is we need to head over to the CLI, and in this CLI, I want you to go ahead and type VTX table. And when you press enter, you'll see that you have 0 bands, 0 channels, 0 power levels, and your power values and your power labels are all nada. That means that this is not set up at all. So I'm going to drop a link in the video description to this page right here. And this page right here has all the different VTXs, but I don't know which VTX you have or which smart audio device you have, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the TBS Unify Pro HV, because that's what we're running, the 32, and I'm going to select this. I'm going to hit copy. And then I'm going to minimize, and I'm going to drop all this into the CLI, and I'm going to press enter. And all of that should be set, and I'm going to hit save. Alright, so after I do that, if I go into the CLI and I type VTX table, you will now see that our power levels, our values, and our power labels have all been taken care of. Well, there's still a little bit left to do, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this page back up, and I'm going to drop down, and we are rocking Smart Audio 2.1. So I'm going to go ahead and select this, and I'm going to hit copy, and I'm going to go back to the CLI, and I'm going to hit paste. Now mind you, the power values, the power levels, and the power labels we had already done, but that's okay. We'll punch them all back in, and then I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to hit enter. We're going to hit connect, and if I go into video transmitter, you will now see that everything is here. And you'll also find something really cool, right? So if I go to selected mode, if I know what frequency I like to run, I always run 5840. I can go ahead and hit enter frequency directly, and I can put that in. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to band, race band. I like to run channel 1. I like my power level to be as high as it'll go at 1 watt. I don't want pit mode. I don't need a pit mode frequency, but you do have an option right here for low power disarm. I'm going to have it on. We're going to try it out on. We'll see how we like it, and we'll move from there. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and press save. And what I've got to do now is I've got to go ahead and I've got to solder up the reverse pads on my motors, and then we are ready to take this thing for a flight. We're willing to, we got to do a little test hover. We got to really try this thing out. I'm super excited. I can't wait to check it out and see how it does. If you are not subscribed, make sure you do subscribe so that you can catch all of these new hot videos that are coming out. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you on the next one.